I got to call calling people here. Hold on.
You're on.
Good afternoon and good early evening for some, depending on what part of the nation you are residing in. We got another dynamic show for you, but a couple things I wanted to point out that we should take concern of. Not only COVID-19, which they have some groups here on September the 11th from 2 to 4 at the Blue Hills 53rd and Brooklyn location. Their number is 816-333-7232, and Miss Linda Brown is head of that. And then they got another one. That's the first one from 10 to 2. That's the first one. So the people in St. Louis, I know you got friends in Kansas City. Tell them about it. It's the Blue Hill, the East Side drive to get more people vaccinated. The other important area I want to speak on is just saw Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton, that the importance of the vote. And the march they had the same day Yuma celebrated its 47th anniversary, they had 50,000 people there. I know they were shooting for 100,000 or 200,000, but if each city could bring out 50,000 minority people of color, that'd be a great shot in the arm. So remember that, and I want the people to know, who all do we have on the line with us?
You have Michael Anthony, you have Linda.
Okay, and we still need to get the people who heads up the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. It's a team out of Little Rock, Arkansas. But in the meantime, Michael, since we haven't heard from you in such a long time, you're the one that brought me or gave me the attention of the group we're supposed to have on the show. And then Miss Linda told me about Michael Anthony. So let's start out with you two. Michael, will you open up the show?
Yeah, sure thing. I'd love to. Yeah, we are pretty excited. We've got Kwame and Clarice Abdul. They run the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Monument Organization. And what they've been doing is they've gone around and they've erected these monuments to signify an event that's happened somewhere. And they normally have to do with something with race. And so we're hoping for the 100th anniversary of the Ketcher Race Riot, which Linda, who's on the line today, and I have both done a lot of research in, and we're both really interested in, and we'd like to get that story out to more people. And so I got their number, and I talked to them, and they said, who should we get in contact with? And I told them MC Richardson and Uma. And so I'm hoping they'll be on the line today so we can talk to them about what their plans are.
Yeah, I spoke with them extensively yesterday, and they said they were excited, and they wanted to be part of us. They told us a lot of things they involved in. They told us about the 100-year celebration of the Ketcher situation in 2022. But also, you two were supposed to take part, and Linda tried to carry you last week. But Linda, inform my community about Ketcher, of your background and your family involved in it.
Okay, my family lived in that area from around 1850, I think, and my great-grandaunt was murdered in her home in 1923, and two black men and a black teenage boy were arrested and charged with this. They were rushed to trial within a week and sentenced to death, the two men, and the young teenage boy's trial was later on, and he was sentenced to life in prison, where he died within about 2 years. But the follow-up to that is that someone, and that's debatable, posted signs as telling all the blacks that if they didn't leave that area, that they would all be killed, that they had, I think it was 3 days or 5 days, Michael?
Yeah, 5 days.
5 days. And they had to leave their homes. And they owned this property for the most part. They were productive farmers and entrepreneurs of that day. And that was just a horrible, horrible injustice.
And Michael, how did you get involved with that? What inspired you to get involved with that Ketcher situation back in 1923?
So I was doing some research on another race riot that happened down in southeast Arkansas called the Elaine Race Riot. And I was trying to write a paper on it, and this small article came up by a woman named Wanda Gray for the Encyclopedia of Arkansas on this Ketcher Race Riot that happened 40 years later up in Crawford County. And so I tried to find more and more about it, and I realized there just wasn't anything written on it. And so I decided that, I would contact some of the people, and I would try and get a more, get the story myself. And once I got into contact with Linda, I realized there were a couple of people working on some of this research, but for the most part, it seemed like everybody was spread out. And so I was really interested in, bringing everybody together so we could all have one set of information that we could all work from. And so I think that's what we're trying to work on here in the next year or so.
Do we have Janice on the phone yet, Mr. Our folks?
No, we don't have Janice, nor do we have Mr. Bay.
Okay.
I called them both twice so far.
Okay. One thing about it were Mr. Scott Owen, let's get that right. What has happened between the shows on Ferguson USA, Hot Talk Radio, .com? How many listeners or how many countries are now listening to these shows?
Well, according to one of the websites, we well, let's see here. Let me take a look real quick. At least for the Missouri Black Chamber of Commerce, and I'll check the other one, we had 471 downloads of the podcast. Let me get into yours real quick. And let's see here.
I know you told me several countries.
Yeah, several countries. We were talking in Great Britain. We're talking Belgium. We're talking Brazil. You've been downloaded in all those places, and as well as, let's see here. Hold on a second. Waiting on Mr. Computer here. There we go. All right. Well, you've been downloaded across the world. You've been downloaded 286 times since I started putting your podcasts up. And Brazil, let's see here, Belgium, Germany, Ireland, and all across the United States, including, looks like Seattle, Washington, Maryland, Ohio, quite a few different places, but over the last 2 weeks, 286 people have downloaded your podcast.
I know you said Central America and South America. I know Brazil's in South America.
Right.
You had said, and that really fired me up, and we want to thank all of our listeners and our co-hosts of the various shows, notify their people to be sure to do it internet-wise. But we had a Zoom meeting last week, and I hope that it turned out to be successful. People told us, a lot of people I hadn't heard from in a long time, but this radio station, this internet is growing like the Temptation song is growing. But we need each and every one of you who got their own Facebook to tell your people, to inspire your people to tune in. And how do they reach this station, Scott or R?
Well, you can get it on FergusonUSAHotTalkRadio.com, or you can get on Facebook and go Ferguson USA Hot Talk Radio, or FUSAHTR is the website, or you can get us on YouTube or Twitch, or like I said, where you get your podcasts. RSS.com puts it out to Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can get it pretty much anywhere you want, as long as you put in Ferguson USA Hot Talk Radio in there. And Yuma, forgive me.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yuma has a Facebook page as well. Just look up United Minority Media Association on Facebook, and you'll find all the shows right there too. So.
Well, also our new website address is or will be YumaHQKC1.org. So we want to get that word out and get our website up quickly. And we want a lot of people to be involved. Like we're waiting on the family in Little Rock, North Little Rock, because what we're going to start and put on that website is all the people who make up our various public affairs shows throughout the country. They get their listing on the website. And so we can, and let the people, all we need from them, the name of the show, the time of the show, and what's it going to be heard at, and the email address, because sometimes shows will change because they might go to a different time zone or whatever. But we want to do this, and all of this is through the good graces of the Missouri Black, what's that again, I keep forgetting. What's the name of the group?
The Missouri
Now,
Black
he must be trying to
Chamber
reach
of
someone.
Commerce.
It's the Missouri Black Chamber of Commerce. They have been, Scott and the Missouri Black Chamber of Commerce have been very instrumental in providing the opportunity to reach out to many people throughout the world. And Linda, we got to get it up there. And you from what part of Montana?
I'm from the southwest Montana, southwest corner.
What's the name of your state, or your city, your town? Okay.
Bozeman.
Now,
Linda, we have a contract up in, we work with now up in, oh my God.
Billings?
Yeah, Billings, Montana. I was down there at the same time, Billings, Montana, because Missouri Black Chamber of Commerce has a lot of word of mouth also throughout the National Chamber of Commerce. And he also said we all have to spread the word about our shows on our website that we have called AmericanMarketplace.com also. So we have some other outlets that we are putting together. And our Vice President, Mr. Churchy Board, right now is down in Costa Rica. So right now, hopefully we'll be down there pretty soon also with our radio shows.
Okay, Linda, tell us, what's your makeup up in Bozeman, Montana? Of people I'm talking about.
Oh, the vast majority in Montana are white. I think it's about 94%. The next largest population are the Native Americans, the First Peoples, and then a smaller population of blacks and Hispanics and Asians.
Well, I thought you had a lot of tribal nations up there. What are some of the names?
Oh, that's what I said. Oh, we have the Crow tribe is probably the biggest tribe up here, and we have the Northern Cheyenne, and we have the Blackfeet, and then a lot of smaller tribes. There's quite a few Native American tribes here.
Okay. Michael, what's happening down there in Fayetteville?
I'm actually down on Lake Gleason right now for the Labor Day, but I know the Hogs won today here in Arkansas. The football team.
Go Hogs.
Yeah.
Oh, they did win today?
Yeah, for once they beat Rice.
Oh, Rice and gravy, huh? No, just Rice. Rice University, okay. What was the score, Mike?
38-17.
Okay, I got a great-grandson that has a scholarship, and you'd be surprised what these scholarships pay now. His is, he can't tell me not to say it because the public has the right to know. His scholarship over a 4-year period is worth $200,000. So that means I'm high on education. That means we have to go back. A lot of people don't have money to go to college, but if they do real well in education and they talking about the test scores, talking about the grade average, they might be fortunate, or be an athlete, they might be fortunate enough to get a scholarship. Don't all you talk at once.
Didn't know you were finished.
Okay.
Well, yes, you know my football. Well, right now Mizzou is still here, 17-14 over Michigan Central.
Central Michigan.
Yeah, but they're also what we call the SEC. Missouri is, and so is.
Could you project your voice better, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mizzou and Arkansas are both part of the SEC conference, which takes very good care of their athletes because they're making a lot of money and they're well known around the world also.
Michael, Anthony, what number do you have for our people with the Arkansas Peace and Justice? They told me Memorial Movement, okay? What number do you have for them? They gave me the cell number, which is 501 442 442 7377. Or if you would, try 422 instead of the 4442 I gave you.
I usually call their home office.
Well, you called their home office, but they gave me their cell number. They said that's how they can be reached. Okay, we can call their home. It doesn't matter. Michael, you're the one who introduced us to us, so you owe us that you can reach them. Or did you make that name up? Well, I'll clarify that. I did have a very good conversation with them. and they're supposed to, I think I told you, Linda, they're supposed to help celebrate or put out a marker or a memorial deal, whatever, the year 2022, that'll celebrate 100 years of the Ketcha incident.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. I think the more recognition we can get for these events, the better.
And they're a pretty big organization. They have offices in 4 different cities in the state.
But that's one thing, okay, the more you talk about these different situations, okay, you're being more about the Black expression and a little bit now, okay, people right now kind of keep a cap on the, hold back on Black history being taught in our schools, and that's also the Black history in general, okay, it needs to be told.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's what you guys are doing there, kind of bring the truth to light, and that's always a great thing to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when I teach my students, they just never know about any of these incidents, so it's great to get, especially a monument that you can point to and show them.
We did a show last Saturday on the Lunch with Richardson and Guests, and we talked about the 1519 project as well as the crucial racial theory. And one of the things we were all talking to one of our members in the chamber was a reverend here, and he started a program teaching his young students how they can go about trying to reverse the information that's not being told, and teach them about how they can find out more about their communities by asking them directly, what do they know about their own communities? What do they remember the most? And that's the first thing I'm doing, kind of what do you know about where you live at, so you can pass it on to someone else. And that's the first step, and matter of fact, Scott, we got in a conversation, and he was saying something, he said, well, like you, Michael, and like Linda, Scott said, as a white, I like to know more about Black history, because, the more history you know about everybody, the better off everyone.
Now, what about, okay, go ahead. I'll yield to you.
I'm just agreeing with him. I think the more that we learn about this stuff, the better for everyone.
I'm in the middle of a book called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel Acho. And I think it's one of the best books I've read for white people who are curious about why it's so important to know exactly what you're saying about the history of Black America, the history of the Native Americans, and the true history, not just the sanitized history.
Anyway,
it's a great book.
It is.
Well, see, the more that we understand about people how to survive, and survival was initially created for everybody to survive, not me survive, you not survive. And that's where we have a problem that nowadays we can all thrive together. Things can become unbalanced. And most times people know we got cars. If we got a car, we got to get that tire fixed or get it balanced. Otherwise, we're going to wear tires going to wear out, and the car's going to be useless at some point.
That's a good analogy.
So that's just some of the things that the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and our members that we do here in Missouri, we're balancing out. And since Steve knows, he's a member there in Kansas City. And what we're doing is trying to spread the word around our state as much as we can. Let people know that that Black do have history. Matter of fact, we have a project in Haytown, Missouri, where we get on a site there was a former Negro high school site. It was a complex that was built in 1934, was since demolished, by the way.
Number you have dialed is not in service.
We're trying to resurrect that site right now, with a new supermarket, some new housing, and some businesses, to try to build on their history and bring out that history at the same time. Because again, it's up to us right now to catch us on some of the things that's going on. And our generation go forward.
Can I ask what you're calling about?
We're trying to reach the family. Got the number with the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement.
This is live radio.
This is a cell number.
This is the MC Richardson trying to get in contact with our guest today. My name is Al First. We got Linda from Montana. We also got Michael Anthony. We got Scott. And we have you. I think you can listen to Yes, You Come in Kansas City. And we do stuff live on radio. This is definitely live. Phone calls in the background. Okay. And I'm just sitting here with MC Richardson. When he comes back to the telephone, in the microphone, I should say, the microphone is not a telephone.
Hello.
But soon he got somebody here, which is a good thing. But we will not eardrop on the telephone call to see what's going on. But
well, we were not successful in reaching the number I was given. But on the same thing, my favorite words is the show must go on. I want to ask Linda or anybody. Most Native Americans, I'll say American Indian, they go to boarding schools. Do they teach American Indian history in those schools?
The boarding school is kind of a thing of the past, and now they have schools on the reservations, and they do learn about their history, but not as much as I think they should. Well, I mean, who am I to judge, but not as much as I think that the elders would like them to, because the language is getting lost, and a lot of the history is getting lost as well.
So approximately how many Native American tribes are there in where you live at in Montana?
Oh, in Montana, I think there are 9 in Montana. I don't go by that. I don't really know. I think the most Indian tribes and the most reservations are actually in California, if you can believe that. There's over 100.
Well, they got quite a few in Kansas too. We were exploring that. I did hear from the people from Topeka, but they didn't get back with me.
Well, one of the things here in St. Louis, okay, I can't say we have a lot here, but we do have, some spread out, down in, I guess, in the Hayti region also. But like I said, but originally when the Indians went to boarding school, they were first thing they were taught was not to talk about talking their native tongue, or about what happened on the villages, on the villages they came from. Because there was one way they were trying. That's one way they start talking in codes. Even talking in various ways to communicate. And in some cases work successfully, okay, because they were still able to pass the word on to each other, And one thing when we said in people of color, I always have been very creative, okay, and kind of create things. On our program today, we talked about that ancient history coming in right now, where they had doors being made, hinges and stuff, where all this stuff was created by blacks, by people of color in the Middle East, because that's all that stuff there is, people of color. It was shared later on with craftsmen, that they taught these skills that they had.
Okay. Well, another thing, maybe Linda, maybe Mac can probably, Mike, that I ran across over the Heart of American Indian Center, and this young lady, last name was Sanchez. I said, how did a Native American get last name of Sanchez? And she said, well, it's a long story. Now, for your information, what I was told, Native Americans or American Indian could not buy land in their name.
No. The same thing here in St. Louis, Tennessee, back in 1946. We were able to break that barrier where the site right now is a historical site. For the first time, they bought the land because they had, most cities have what you call them, covenants that prohibit their family members and those people in the areas from being able to sell their land to a black person. It was against the law. And there's several books written about that. And that allowed to come to those communities. And even right now, we have covenants all around the country. They're still in existence, forbidding different things from black folks being able to move into neighborhoods.
Well, that's something a lot of people, like I stated earlier, that at one time in Kansas City, black folks, people of color, black folks, what I'm talking about, they couldn't live past 28th Street. However, there was a group of people that lived on 53rd Street, east of Prospect Avenue, one of the major streets in Kansas City. And a lot of people, it's just like most of the Hispanics, Mexicans and Hispanics, they all live in the southwest area. And a lot of them were the young kids, they wouldn't allow them to speak Spanish in the house. But they could teach it because some of them became interpreters for their family, but this is something that people of color had suffered for a long time. A lot of people take it for granted. Oh, that's not true. Who would think to do something like that? The whole American world.
Well, I think also for the Native American names, the boarding schools anglicized their students' names to help them better assimilate. So a lot of the Native Americans did take anglicized names, and apparently Hispanic names as well.
In case you just tuned in, you're listening to Guess Who's Coming to Kansas City, and we had hoped to talk about the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement, what they told me, but we do have the person, the history teacher. He can feel perfectly what we need to know about them. Isn't that right, Linda and Ira and Scott? Michael can handle that, right?
I'm sure he can.
I'm sure he can too.
Let's see enough guy.
Hope so.
Your turn, Mike.
So what do y'all want to know?
Isn't that something? Everything we possibly can. The public has the right to know.
One thing that we always talk about on our program is that nowadays that everyone, including everybody on this program, has a cell phone, which means they have an encyclopedia in their hands. So anything that you want to know, all you gotta do is just ask Google or find some other search engine to find out. So there's no reason people not to know about their history. People just choose not to know. Not so that they don't need to know, they don't want to know. They can find out. All they gotta do is just dial up the right, information. Or either go to the library if you want to, the old-fashioned way. But right now, we all have computers in our hands, and it's said that we have enough information on our phone to land a satellite on the moon if we wanted to, and bring it back on sometimes.
Yes, yes.
I will say that one of the things that we have to, as historians, we're trying to do is, add that stuff to where people can get to it. So if you looked up the Catcher Race Ride even 15 years ago, you wouldn't have seen anything. So it's important that people like Linda, she's done so much research for us. I mean, it's just invaluable, and you can't always look it up. You need somebody to put it on there first.
Well, see, that's what you and Linda come in right now is so important. That what she's doing now is being documented, and now it can be shared. Like you said, if it's not there, but that's another good thing now about the media that we use now. Sometimes they put stuff down we don't want to be put down, but the good stuff, it's kind of hard to be put down, but sometimes, the facts will hold, but first of all, people got to know that the facts are there. And I think we'll see, thanks to Michael and to Linda, your family should be very proud, okay? Because right now, what's happening in Kitchen right now is becoming more and more aware around the world, okay? The other people have them like your families down there now. And that's inspiring them also to do some research on their own selves, find about their family.
Well, let's ask the history teacher, the graduate who's working on his PhD in history, what type of history are you teaching, my brother?
This semester I have two survey courses, a freshman and sophomore, and we're learning about America since the Civil War. But just this week I taught them about disfranchisement, we learned about the origins of the New South, the emergence of Jim Crow, and then I ended the lesson with Catcher Race Riot and the Elaine Race Riot and the Tulsa Race Riot, because I wanted them to see the real-world implications of these things.
I know I talked to Mr. Folks about this, but did y'all see the birth of a nation? We had to see it at the college I went to.
Yeah, we showed it. We show parts of it. We don't show the whole thing. It's pretty long.
I've seen parts of it as well.
Well, that's not the important. Well, one thing that I'm about to say is Michael teaching about the Civil War. There are a lot of battles that took place in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and that's where I grew up at. And my father was born in the National Memorial Cemetery there, and there's been a lot of ups and downs of the Civil War. was taking place there because the Mississippi River was very much a part of the war also. And they put cotton back and forth down the river as well as trying to protect the South. The wealth was moved up in that river also out of Vicksburg.
Yeah, and a lot of people overlook the importance of the South in the Civil War. Sorry, just to add that.
Okay, I'm quite sure if you haven't heard anything about it, 1619 Project. We had a special show on that, and I know Mr. R. Folks is he knows the ins and outs about that, and that was before the Civil War.
Well, that's a long time before the Civil War.
Yes, it was 1619, I think so.
Well, when we have one of our ministers who's also a teacher by heart that has a project that he started this past summer where he took some students and he's actually going to take this to the next level because we asked some of the group station here as well as the National Chamber of Commerce about what he's teaching the students there, how to deal with the people read about stuff in history, okay, and they ask themselves, what can I do? How can I be a part of this? How can I change this? How can I, pass this on to my own kids and stuff, And so we're trying to like I asked them, if you can just sort of document stuff. Like this show right now we're doing here, MC, your program is being heard around the world, so people are going to hear today what they did not know before about Arkansas, about all the, the riots that took place. Not a lot of riots, but a lot of lynching that took place. There's a program that's being shown now on Black News Channel about the black lynching that took place in the South. How, there's talk about, Mr. Trump, his family, his father was a part of the Klan. Back in those days, the first went to church on Sunday, white family went to church, okay. They go home, they have dinner, and the wife would spend time with the daughter. And the son and the father went down to the big hall the square when they wanted to mention every Sunday. And that was their rite of passage. I mean, so those are the type of things, okay, that people will instill with about what it is, how it was. This was just the way they did business. It was customary for them to go to a mention. And I could not imagine myself watching somebody being hanging from a tree or hanging from something that's being lynched. And they just took this as just, this is part of, my regular Sunday. And you can think about that. That was very, very heartless all in itself to think about that.
Yeah, that's horrific. And I think one of the good things about this book that I'm reading right now is that he lists several books at the end of each one of his chapters that can help people get further information about the things that have happened in the past. And I think that's a great resource.
Oh, yes. I mean, that's another thing, okay, when people nowadays, so we are definitely looking for information, okay. We are inquisitive people, and that's like then what you're doing, and what you have done so far, even the programs that I keep saying over and again, okay, it's a step in the right direction. And anything we do at the station here, I know Scott would agree, that we can provide some factual information, okay, about our history, because without knowing your history, like you said, you're getting repeated over and over and over again. Most of us don't want to repeat our history over and over again. We want to grow, and teach our kids how to grow. One of the things that I know we're not talking about this, okay, but one of the things I told MC, matter of fact, today MC was like guest on my radio program today. I thank him very much for taking the time. But I asked him a question as an educator, and we talk about face masks. That most young kids go to school, kids adapt very well in school, Michael, to wearing face masks. But their parents have a problem with the kids, but the kids go to school, they don't have a problem wearing a face mask. Have you ever had any kids complain about wearing a face mask, Michael?
No, we enforce it pretty heavily, and I've never had anyone have any problem with it.
Yeah.
At least not what they told me.
Okay, I'm saying that's the thing, okay, that people have no problem with it, okay, and that's a good thing. For the kids to understand, but the parents themselves, most places, they just don't understand that the child, if a child in your class, if they have a mask, everybody wondering what's wrong with him.
All right, Belinda, what's the thoughts in Montana about? Is it people don't want to wear it? Do they wear it, or is it mandatory or what?
We have a governor up here who has said that it's not mandatory, that people, that he expects people to be responsible and do the right thing. So it's not mandated, but the schools have taken the tact of saying that they're going to mandate them.
And that's how we're doing it here in Arkansas as well.
Yeah, because one of the things, okay, the Delta virus that we're dealing with, but they now have a new one, the MU virus that's coming into Illinois right now. We had over 12,000 people that's been affected by that already. And normally when one virus comes in, there's a whole new situation of fallout, repercussions, okay, who it's going to affect. The last one, the Delta variant, infecting those young people more so than older people. And that's something that we have to understand, and as an educator of mine, you know that kids are just so easily, okay, once you teach them the right thing to do, they have no problem falling in line, am I right?
Yeah, usually.
You were usually white, like that.
There's always some exceptions.
But unfortunately, that's in life in general today, okay? But for the most part, most kids like their classmates, they like their teachers, and they want to go to school, okay? And not have to go to another year of being shut down.
Just like we're talking about the COVID-19, but also they're getting more people to take their flu shots here in Kansas City. Is that, does that have an impact in Montana, St. Louis, or Arkansas?
I can't speak. Well, in Montana, the people I know get flu shots every year and have been for some time. COVID got so politicized that I think that's why people are having such trouble with it.
Yes, Linda, I agree with you. Okay, we all just kids. We got polio, we got all those vaccines that we naturally just take because we want to be healthy.
Exactly.
And I think health is something that we all know we need to be healthy for us to live our lives. Because there's so much more now to live for than was in the past.
Yes.
I know we all lived through the chicken pox and the measles, and what's that other one they had? Was that the whooping cough?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Well, what about the one that occurred? Everybody talk about Tuskegee, the syphilis project they had, that they said they practice on black folks. Okay.
No, that's what it is.
You from down that part of the country? Tell us about it.
Well, there was a misinformation there. Okay, they did not. What they did there, they refused to give the Tuskegee, the people there, the vaccines. Okay, for their prevention from getting syphilis. So they didn't practice on them. All they did, they were denied, the vaccines, to prevent it. And so that's why that misinformation goes that they were experimenting on. Well, they were experimenting on by not giving the vaccines that everybody else did.
Well, this made a great impact. If you ask anybody, people of color, about the Tuskegee situation, all of them are cognizant of what they heard.
Yeah, they heard, but they heard the other way around, and not so much the fact that they were not given anything. They were refused to give the vaccines to them. And that would make them sick.
Well, let's step back to Native American when they used smallpox from Europe to kill off the Indians.
Right.
Put it in their blankets.
All through life, okay, history, white, the settlers, and see, this is all about trying to get more land and more land and more land and taking their land. And in doing so, there are all types of schemes that have come up over time that have been successful in some cases. Taking people's land, or taking land and money are synonymous with each other nowadays. Right, Michael?
Yeah, it's sad to say, but yeah.
Well, most people, when they talk about Native American, everybody remember the Trail of Tears. Who can talk about that on this show today?
I can give a summary if you need.
Okay.
So Andrew Jackson, the country's 7th president, he went down into Florida and forcibly removed a couple different tribes, mainly the Seminole tribe out of southeastern Florida. And he made them go basically across the country west, and a lot of them settled in Oklahoma, but some went even further west into Oregon, like the Nez Perce. And then later on in the 1880s, whenever those tribes had already been moved, the country went back in with the Dawes Act and moved them again back out to Oklahoma. So they got moved a couple different times in the course of 100 years off their land.
Didn't they also move the Cherokee and the Choctaw from Georgia and the Virginias and Tennessee, I think?
And then the Supreme Court tried to stop in and stop Jackson. They actually voted against him being able to do that, and he took the army in and still did it anyway, and said that they didn't. He basically said, since the Supreme Court doesn't have an army, they don't have authority.
Wow.
It's one of the bigger overreaches of power from a president ever.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Oh, I remember hearing that in Popo.
Well, one of the things I was taught as a young person, and I was at a conference for the labor unions, and coalition of trade unions, and one of the vice presidents said, in life, okay, there are two types of people. There are one that have things done unto them, and the one that have things done for them. And the powerless have things done for them, and the powerless have things done unto them. And that is so true, and so true, and so true. And if you got money, you got power.
That's true.
Well, I think Michael, we brought up your alley talking about history, aren't we?
Oh, I'm having a blast. Love it.
One of the things, Michael, I think, people on the line agree that people talk bad about our unions and stuff, but the unions have been able to fight for the small man, underprivileged guys, and get the salaries increased, for us to get decent wages, in our homes and stuff. And most times a company that's non-union will give the people extra benefits to keep them from joining the union. So when you like it or when you're not, they have been the ones that have been fighting for, including our country, and also making sure that you get quality work for what you're getting done, and making sure crafts are maintained.
And just to add on to that, whenever we think of unions, we always think of these groups that are working together. And when you had it in the 1880s, all the way up to the New Deal, you had black and white Americans working together in these unions, and that's why they were so successful. But that's also why rich white people tried to start driving poor white men and poor black men apart, because they knew that that's where power of the unions lied. And so that's a big story that people don't talk about when they talk about the rise of Jim Crow and disfranchisement, is they were really trying to take that power away from average workers. And the best way to do that was to make the races segregate.
Tell us about Jim Crow. How did that name come about?
Say it again, what?
Tell us about Jim Crow. What does that mean, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so Jim Crow is just a term that historians usually use to describe the forced segregation of society along color lines. So it happened around somewhere in the 1905, somewhere in there. But it starts with a separate coach bill where they would forcibly make a white train car and a black train car. But then that really just transformed into the rest of society. You have black drinking fountains, you have white drinking fountains, you have black restrooms, white restrooms, and everything, every part of society is segregated. And historians have started to kind of realize the reason that was happening was mainly because they knew that there was such union power in poor white and poor black men and women congregating and talking. Just the mere fact of them hanging out together was scary to people in power.
Michael, when I was a young man in Victory, Mississippi, my family made me give me a little part-time job after school in Woolworths. So I came in, and it just was sweep the floors. And when I came in there, the first thing I did when everybody left, okay, they had a colored water fountain and a white, had a Negro and a white water fountain. The first thing I did, Michael, is taste the water out the white water fountain to see if the water tastes any different. So that's how but everything you had, was colored, not was colored. Because we went to the theaters in Vicksburg, we all had to go through a back door to go upstairs to watch the movies.
That's a great story, wow.
And then like I said, even when I came north from down in Vicksburg, I went to the Greyhound bus station, went up and had to get my bag, a little small ticket, okay, and we could not, and we didn't have a waiting room. We had to sit down and sit way outside in the cold, for the bus to leave. Where they had a nice, comfortable, waiting room, and I didn't see a waiting room until I got to Memphis, Tennessee. And I said, wow, life is good.
Wow. Yeah, I need you to come talk to my students, because I think, if you're talking to 18-year-olds nowadays, they don't realize how close they are to that time period, that there are people still living who experienced this. They think it was a lifetime ago.
No, I'd be more than happy to, and not only that, it was the things that they dealt with as far as the schooling, as far as the books that we had passed me down, and also in our schools, we were always taught that things that we couldn't do, we had to walk. They taught us, to walk and keep your head down all the time. Well, I was kind of against the grain because I always was taught not to raise your head up to look to heaven all the time. But what's coming in blessings? So,
Michael, I have a request. Michael Anthony, I have a request. In one of your classes, if Mr. Folks could find time to do an audio for the class on the different subjects.
I would love that. I think it would be great.
Well, Michael, I think I sent Mr. Richardson invitation there. Because I think, and Scott would tell you, very much, as a matter of fact, another life that I called, I won what you call an Emmy Award for being a media archivist. So I love history.
So, Mr. Folks, I'm from Missouri. You have to show us that you will do that down in Arkansas.
Well, Michael had to tell me what to do, where to be, how to do, what I need to do, okay?
Yeah, we'll need to hook it up so I can get, because especially when we start talking about the 1950s and the 1960s and the lead up to the Civil Rights Movement, I would love to have someone who experienced that time period. The students just think, Martin Luther King was so long ago, and it just really wasn't.
No, not for us, old people.
Michael, and I know you know about Mississippi burning, okay?
Well, yeah.
That took place, right down the highway from where I lived in Vicksburg, and also when Medgar Evers, not Medgar Evers, when the gentleman got killed in Canton, Mississippi, that was really for 30 miles away. So a lot of stuff was going around me as a young kid that I was experiencing, and and we were, again, living through all this, and the world was constantly changing as it is today. And we didn't have anyone like myself to share the history, okay, of our history maybe 5 or 6 years ago when we were growing up.
Yeah, we do whole classes at Arkansas on the 1960s. We'll do a whole semester on just that decade because there's so much going on.
Oh, yes.
I have a story about the different water fountains. If you're interested, when I was 8 years old. We flew back I grew up in California, so I grew up in a mixed race society, and we flew back to Florida to visit my father, who was working there at the time, and we went into a department store, and there were the 2 water fountains, white and colored. Well, the white one was this big, fancy one that was cooled, and the colored one was the small one that was down low, and that's the only one I could reach, so I went over and drank out of it. And one of the ladies in the department store just came over, you cannot drink from that water fountain. And I said, why not? He said, well, that's for the colored people. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. I said, it's the only one I can reach. And she just told my mother that she better give me some lessons if we were going to be there in the South.
It's funny how kids are so quick to pick up on how dumb those ideas are.
Yes. And we were saying, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me.
The water tastes the same.
As it turns out.
Well, it's a lot of people, elected officials that I knew, one of their sayings was, our ice water is just as cold as the other ice water.
No, black ice is colder than white. White ice is colder than black ice.
Well, our time is, and what we will be doing on the 11th and the 18th, we will rebroadcast those shows, and they will own catch-up. how to go on. And if you would, tell the people so Linda and Mike can tell the people how they can listen to those shows. How do they get them on their internet?
Oh, well, simply the next Saturday and on the 11th and on the 18th, you tune in like you did today to FreedomUSAHotTalkRadio.com, and the prompt comes up. You have to come to Kansas City, and we can be, as Scott said earlier, we can be heard on our live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and now with our podcast. I'm sure we have our podcast. That's the proper language. Our podcast now can be heard around the world on Spotify, on Apple, and most matter of fact, anywhere you got a podcast being delivered now, you can find this program also.
Also, Mike, what has happened to you since you started on this project? You've been approached to write a book. I think, Linda, I don't know what happened to our people in Fort Smith, but they'll come around. So what has happened to you, and what ideas do you have for getting this out to the people, Linda? First, Mike, we'll let men be first this time.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I was approached by University of Arkansas Press to write a book on the 100th anniversary of Catcher about the incident, and they want me to link it to the Elaine race riot in 1919 as well as the Tulsa race riots in 1921. So I'm going to try and tell a whole story that links all three and explains how these are not incidents that were anomalous. These are almost run-of-the-mill. These happened all over the South. These are just the ones we have most documented, and that's kind of the argument of the book.
Michael, it also happened in we had the race riot here in East St. Louis also, and that was in 1917.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all through that time period. There's so many cases, but I just picked three of the biggest ones, and that's kind of the point, is I want to show that, these are not exceptional things. These happen all the time.
Yes.
Okay, now, Linda, women need to talk now. Speak up, Miss Griffin. You can talk, it's okay. Are you still with us, Linda?
I think we just lost her there.
I hogged the time too much, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, she dropped off and she went one to me.
Oh, when we mentioned we want her to say something?
I know she's writing a book, if you want me to talk about her book.
Yes, go ahead.
She is writing a book on her great-grand-aunt, who's completely tied up into all this, who is Effie Latimer, who was the woman who was killed in Catcher. And Linda is her great-grandniece, and she's writing a book that will talk about her life and explain how she's seeing this from the perspective of a white person, and how she's kind of outraged for her ancestors, and she's trying to help get those three black men exonerated, because she knows that they had nothing to do with it. And she, and she's in a position of power here because her great-grand-aunt was the one who was killed. So I think her voice holds a lot more credence than other people talking about it.
And what's she going to do with her great-aunt, Effie Latimer? What is she trying to do in order to bring that reality in the DNA?
So like I told you, she really wants to exonerate those three black men, and the best way to do that is to get modern forensic science on our side. And so what she's trying to do is get the body exhumed, because we know where the gravesite is. And if we can get her body exhumed and we can test, there's a couple different things we can test. We can test her skull to see if she died on impact of the gun shooting her and her getting hit in the back of the head. And if we can prove that, we can prove that her confession, which we believe to be false, because she came to and it allegedly stated the three men as her killers. So if we can prove that she never regained consciousness, we can throw that evidence out, which was the main evidence against the men. But more importantly, we'd really like to check DNA under her fingernails and see if we can prove that the killer was in fact. We have a couple suspects we think it might have been, and we hope we can find out. But that's a bit of a long shot.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for today. And before we close, would each and every one of you give how you can be reached? And Michael, did you talk to that attorney? Michael's trying to get attorneys to work with him on this project.
Yeah, I've got two different attorneys, and then, like I said, the Peace and Justice Memorial has a lot of connections, and they're trying to work out ways to maybe get either a scholarship started for this, or what they really want is to try and find some of these ancestors, the Richardsons, the Coggs, the Fergusons, and try and find if they can get some kind of something back to these people who lost so much during this period.
Well, I'll give Janice their number if she can reach them. We failed to talk to them today, but I do have their address. They live in North Little Rock. But
Yep.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And producer, how can they reach you?
You can go to FergusonUSAHotTalkRadio.com. You can email me at voiceovers, VOICEOVERS, number 4, letter U, at gmail.com. Or you can call me at 314-277-0621.
Okay, thank all of you. And Howard, did you want Scott to speak for you, or did you want to say something?
Well, no, you can get hold of me through Scott or MC Richardson.
Thank you very much. I heard that Arkansas won today and Missouri won today.
No. They're leading 24 to 20.
Not yet.
Wait a minute. What's the deal now?
They're leading 24 to 21 with 9 minutes left in the game. And they had the ball.
Is that Arkansas or is that Missouri?
Oh, that's Missouri. We haven't won yet.
I hope they don't blow it.
So, yeah, Michael. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Be sure to stay tuned. Like I said, we're going to rebroadcast those shows that April the 3rd and April the 24th. They will be broadcast on the 11th and the 18th of September. Be sure to turn on and tune in each and every day, Saturday, bar none, and you'll get no nonsense type information. Thank all of you, and have a good Labor Day. And Mike, tell your wife that